This clause flips the liability. If you sign this, sir, your company takes the fall. The boardroom went silent. Maya Williams wasn't supposed to be there. 16 years old, standing in borrowed sneakers and a janitor's badge, she pointed to a line buried deep on page 14 of a billion-dollar merger contract. Her voice, calm but firm, cut through polished glass and billion-dollar egos like a knife. Jackson Hale, founder of Hale Investments, stared at the girl, his pen hovering above the signature line. Clara Hale's expression tightened. Derek Vaughn, the Texas dealmaker with a smile made of smoke, chuckled nervously. "Excuse me," he said. Maya didn't blink. "That clause means if anything goes wrong after the merger, your company takes the legal hit." Vaughn walks away clean. 1 second earlier, Jackson had been ready to sign. Now his hand trembled. The janitor's daughter had just stopped a corporate disaster. But before anyone could speak, security was called. And as Maya was led out of the room, her eyes locked with Jackson's. She had just changed everything. Before we dive deeper, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories like this. 8 hours before she disrupted a boardroom full of billionaires, Maya Williams was on her knees, scrubbing scuff marks off a glass conference wall. The night shift had just begun at Hale Investments. On the 27th floor of the towering steel and glass headquarters, the world was asleep, except for the janitors, except for Maya and her mother. Denise Williams vacuumed quietly down the hall, her movements precise, practiced. She'd cleaned these offices for over a decade. Never late, never loud, never noticed. That's how you kept a job when you were invisible. Maya was supposed to be the same, quiet, fast, careful. But she was different. Not careless, not clumsy, just curious. Always had been. Instead of music in her earbuds, she listened to TED Talks and court transcripts. Instead of TikTok, she scrolled legal blogs. She once read all 250 pages of the Enron deposition just to understand the anatomy of a corporate downfall. Her teachers said she was disruptively smart. Her mother said she was asking for trouble. That night, as Maya emptied a shredder bin, she saw a thick folder left carelessly in the copier tray. Its red stamp read, "Final Draft, Merger Agreement." She hesitated. "Don't." Her mother's voice echoed in her head. "Don't get curious. Don't get involved. Just clean and go." But something tugged at her. She glanced down the hallway, empty. With trembling fingers, Maya opened the folder. Pages of legal text stared back at her, dry, dense, deliberately confusing. But line by line she read. She scanned the risk section, then the liability clause. There. Subparagraph C, line 3. 1 sentence, 18 words. But it hit like a bolt of lightning. She whispered aloud, "This clause flips the liability." She read it again, slower. The merger transferred full legal and financial exposure to Hale Investments, her mother's boss's company. If anything went wrong, post-deal, if fraud surfaced, if lawsuits erupted, it would be Jackson Hale's firm on the hook. Not Vaughn Global. Not the predators in polished suits. Just him. It wasn't an oversight. It was a trap. She snapped the folder shut. Her heart pounded. She couldn't unsee it now. Down the corridor, Denise noticed her daughter standing frozen. "Maya, keep moving," she called. "You want to lose this job," Maya ran to her. "Mom, this contract, something's wrong." Denise didn't even look. "We don't read their papers. That's how you get fired." "But Mom, it's serious. Like huge. If he signs this..." "You want to get me fired?" Denise's voice was sharp now. "Put it back and keep cleaning." Maya obeyed, but she didn't forget. Hours later, she and her mom finished up early. Denise went to clean the executive suite. Maya lingered near the boardroom, the folder still fresh in her mind. That's when she saw them. Jackson Hale, Clara Hale, and Derek Vaughn entering the room. Security scanned the area. They were preparing for something big. She stepped back, tucked herself behind a pillar, watched. Jackson looked tired. Clara looked cold. Derek looked smug. The folder she'd seen was now on the table, opened between them. And then her moment. A junior associate rushed in, flustered, whispering that they were short on catering staff. Someone had canceled the coffee runner. chaos over caffeine, a distraction. Without thinking, Maya moved. She grabbed a lanyard from a nearby desk, a leftover visitor badge, and walked with purpose into the boardroom as the assistant scrambled with trays. Her hoodie zipped, sneakers quiet. She pretended to wipe a glass panel, then froze as Jackson lifted his pen. That's when it happened. The words came out before fear could silence them. "Sir, don't sign that." All heads turned. Time stopped. Maya pointed to the contract. That clause, page 14. It flips liability. Your company takes the fall. Clara blinked. Derek frowned. Jackson stared. And in that moment, the boardroom of Hale Investments, the heart of a billion-dollar empire, was being held hostage by a 16-year-old janitor's daughter. The silence broke like glass. "Excuse me," Derek said, rising slightly. Maya didn't move. "It's disguised, but it's a trap." "If you sign, who are you?" Clara snapped. "She shouldn't be here," someone else muttered. But Jackson wasn't speaking. He was reading, flipping the pages. And then his pen lowered. Maya took a step back. Security was already approaching. They took her by the arm. But as the door closed behind her, she looked back and saw it. In Jackson's eyes. Recognition. Not of who she was, but of what she'd just done. The next morning, sunlight filtered cold and unforgiving through the marble lobby of Hale Investments. It glared off the floor like judgment. Maya Williams sat in a plastic chair inside the building's small windowless security office. Her hands were folded in her lap, her back straight, her eyes unmoving. She'd been sitting for over an hour. No one spoke to her. No one offered water. No one told her what would happen next. Next to her, Denise Williams sat frozen. Her uniform was spotless, but her posture was tight like a rubber band pulled too far. She hadn't said a word since the elevator doors shut behind them. Maya whispered, "I'm sorry." Denise turned her head slowly, the lines in her face more defined than usual. "You should be," she said flatly. Maya's chest tightened. I couldn't let him sign it. It was wrong." "You think I don't know it was wrong?" Denise's voice was sharp, now low, but cutting. "You think I haven't seen the same rot for years, but I kept my head down because we need this job." "You're 16, Maya. You don't get to blow holes in ships you're not even supposed to be on." Maya looked away, shame blooming hot in her chest. "I clean this building to feed us," Denise continued. "Not so you can play whistleblower hero and drag us both out the door." Before Maya could respond, the office door opened with a hiss. A tall, stern woman with a clipboard walked in. Her shoes clicked on the tile like a ticking clock. "Mrs. Williams," she said, not looking at either of them, "you've both been placed on leave pending review." Maya blinked. "Review for what?" "For unauthorized presence in a confidential meeting," the woman replied. "Violation of security protocol. HR will be in touch." "Wait," Maya said, standing. "I wasn't trying to cause trouble." "That's enough," Denise said, her voice weary. She took Maya by the wrist and stood up. The walk to the front entrance was brutal. Every step echoed. Other employees watched silently from their desks and glass offices. No one spoke. No one stopped them. But everyone saw. By the time the revolving doors hissed shut behind them, the cold January wind slapped Maya in the face. Denise didn't stop walking. Maya glanced back once at the gleaming tower behind her. Yesterday, it had looked like opportunity. Today, it looked like punishment. That evening, Maya sat on the couch, her backpack unopened at her feet. A mug of cocoa grew cold in her hands. The apartment was warm, but her insides felt hollow. Denise sat across from her, quietly scrolling through job postings on her phone. "Do you regret it?" Maya asked finally. Her mother paused. "I regret that you lost faith in grown-ups doing their jobs." Maya opened her mouth, then closed it again. How could she explain the weight of that moment? How could she describe the feeling of reading something poisonous and knowing she might be the only one to stop it? Before she could try, her phone buzzed. It was an email. No subject line. No signature. Just 3 words. "You saw it." She clicked. The message was brief. "I used to work there. I know what you saw. If you're willing to talk, I'll listen. Robert Barnes. Maya's breath caught. The name sounded familiar. She searched her memory. A folder months ago, a name on a document she'd once glimpsed while helping her mom dust filing cabinets. Barnes' compliance director. He'd vanished from the company a year ago, rumored to have taken early retirement. Now he was emailing her. She hesitated, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Then slowly she began to type. I think we're both looking at the same thing. Let's talk. The next morning, on the 30th floor of Hale Tower, Jackson Hale sat alone in his corner office. The unsigned contract lay across his desk. He hadn't spoken to anyone. Not his legal team. Not Clara. Not Vaughn. He hadn't touched the document since Maya left. But now he picked it up. His eyes found the exact line Maya had cited, subparagraph C, line 3. She'd been right. Not just right, brilliant, and terrifying. He pulled a dusty file from his safe Barnes' old internal report from 2 years ago. Jackson hadn't read it in full. He trusted Clara and the board to vet things, but there in Barnes's notes, scrawled in red pen. If a liability shift clause like this is ever buried in a signed contract, we're done. The phone on his desk rang. He didn't answer. Back at home, Maya opened her inbox again. Another message from Barnes. This time, there's more. I can prove it wasn't just Vaughn. Clara's name is all over this. Maya's stomach turned. Clara Hale, Jackson's wife. The woman who'd called security on her. Maya had thought she was just cruel. Now she wasn't so sure. She picked up her phone and called Barnes. The truth, Maya was beginning to realize, wasn't hiding in shadows. It was hiding in plain sight. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. The voice on the other end of the call was gravel and caution. Maya, Robert Barnes said, "You have no idea how deep this goes." Maya sat in her bedroom, the door-locked headphones on a notebook open in her lap. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pressed record on her phone. Just in case. I found the clause in the merger, she said. I saw what it was doing. Barnes let out a tired laugh. You're the first one since me who's caught it. That same clause. It was used before in Houston, in Atlanta, even in Toronto. 3 separate mergers. 3 target companies collapsed under liabilities within months. Vaughn walks every time. Wait, Maya said. You mean this isn't just about Hale Investments, it's a pattern, Barnes replied. He buries the clause. Legal teams skim past it. The company signs. Then boom, lawsuits investigations collapse. Vaughn's firm buys back assets for pennies. It's theft with a tie on. Maya's heart pounded. How do you know all this? Because I tried to stop him, Barnes said. I flagged his language, reported it to the board. Clara Hale had me silenced. Maya froze. Clara. She's not just his cover, Barnes continued. She's his entry point. Every time Vaughn gets in the room, Clara's already opened the door. Maya felt her skin go cold. Barnes sighed. I can send you documents, shell companies matching clause templates, payout structures, but I can't meet in person. They're still watching me. They, Maya asked. He didn't answer. Instead, she heard typing. A few seconds later, a ding. An encrypted folder landed in her inbox. Subject, refraud, trail password hint, Enron 2001. She opened it. Dozens of PDFs, wire transfer records, confidential memos, contracts redacted in chunks, but with enough visible to show one terrifying thing. This wasn't just fraud. It was engineered collapse. That night, Maya sat cross-legged on the floor, spreading out printed pages. She highlighted phrases like burden of indemnification, unilateral exit clause, and reverse liability assumption. She didn't know all the legal jargon, but she knew what a setup looked like. Barnes texted again. The only reason they haven't moved yet is that Jackson hasn't signed. The moment he does, it's irreversible. Maya swallowed hard. Then she asked, "What about Clara?" There was a pause. Then came the reply. She's not just helping him now. She's been doing this for years. Meanwhile, 30 floors above her inside Hale Tower's private lounge. Jackson Hale watched the city lights blink in silence. He hadn't told Clara he'd reopened the Barnes report, hadn't told her that Maya had emailed him again. He didn't know what he was looking for, redemption maybe, or just clarity. But that night, clarity came without warning. At 9:42 p.m., he received an email from his bank's internal compliance team. Subject: urgent internal transfer flag. Unusual activity on dormant corporate account. 2.5 Mellers withdrawal attempt. Request initiated under Clara Hale's login credentials. Jackson stared at the screen. The room spun. He picked up the phone. Dialed Clara. She answered on the third ring, voice light unconcerned. Darling, I'm at the gala prep. Everything okay? Did you just authorize a transfer? Silence. Then a soft chuckle. What are you talking about? I'm talking about a dormant account. You tried to pull $2.5 million under company authority. Jackson, she said with mock surprise, that sounds like a system glitch. He hung up. Not in rage, in revelation. Back at home, Maya stood at the kitchen sink, staring blankly as the faucet ran. Denise walked in. That folder again? Maya nodded. I told you, baby. This isn't our fight. I know, Maya whispered, but it became mine the second they used people like us as camouflage. Denise's jaw clenched. They'll come for you. I'm not afraid. That's the problem, Denise said, voice breaking. You should be. At midnight, Barnes sent one final file. A contract from 3 years ago between Vaughn Global and a tech firm in Austin. Same clause, same language, same crash. Attached to the file was a scanned memo with a single note scribbled in red ink. If they ever plant this trap again, whoever sees it must speak, no matter who tries to shut them up. Signed Robert Barnes. Maya printed it, folded it, and placed it in the same folder she had found in the copier tray. Then she looked in the mirror. She wasn't just a janitor's daughter anymore. She was the only person willing to say what others were too afraid to read out loud. At 6:30 p.m., Jackson Hale sat inside the private bar of the Gold Club Lounge, watching the skyline of Chicago from a high-backed leather chair. He nursed a glass of untouched whiskey, but he wasn't drinking. He was observing. Across the room, behind frosted glass, Clara Hale sat in a deep burgundy dress beside Derek Vaughn. They were laughing. She leaned in close, too close. Derek reached across the table and brushed her wrist. The touch wasn't professional. Jackson's fingers tightened around the glass. It wasn't the betrayal that stunned him. It was the realization that he'd been blind. Clara had played him not just as a partner, but as a pawn. His empire, his company, his reputation, all leveraged by the woman who shared his bed and the man who grinned in his face. He left without a word. At the same moment, Maya Williams sat hunched over her kitchen table, eyes locked on her screen. Robert Barnes had sent another message. Look into Clara's spending. 3 offshore accounts in her name: Cayman, British Virgin Islands, Zurich. Maya opened a browser and began to search public registries. Corporate disclosures archived leaks. Her hands trembled. There it was. Clara's name hidden under a dormant trust account in the British Virgin Islands tied to an entity named Raven Cross Holdings, a company registered in a jurisdiction known for silence. Maya gasped. She's in on it. Her mother washing dishes behind her froze mid-scrub. She's not just clueless, Maya whispered. She's involved. The next morning, Jackson received another alert. Internal compliance had flagged a second suspicious request, this time attempting to authorize access to a reserve investment pool meant for emergency executive payouts. Again, the trail led to Clara. But this time, Jackson didn't forward the alert to legal. He forwarded it to his private attorney, along with the Barnes memo. By evening, Maya sat across from Barnes in a video call. His face was half-lit, grainy, but intense. He spoke quickly. The offshore funds match timelines from the other frauds. Clara opens a new account. Vaughn sets up the shell corporation. They execute a friendly merger, and within 6 months, the target collapses. Maya tapped the screen, and the paper trail. Barnes nodded. Thin, but it's there. Digital fingerprints, metadata, shared IPs, credential overlaps. Enough to scare a good prosecutor. Maya's mind raced. But no one's moved on it. They've all been bought or buried, Barnes said flatly. That's why I went quiet. Then why are you talking now? Because you're the only person brave enough to say it out loud. That night, Jackson returned home and found Clara in the penthouse kitchen, sipping wine like nothing had happened. Still at work, she asked. Still protecting what's left, he replied. She smirked. You're being dramatic. I saw you with Derek. She laughed softly, too softly. We're business partners, not at that table. Her face didn't flinch. We can't all be saints, Jackson. Apparently not, he said, stepping closer. What is Ravencross Holdings? Now she blinked. Just once. He'd hit the mark. She turned, setting down her glass. Don't go digging where you don't want dirt. I already did. Her voice dropped. Then you know enough to stop. No, Jackson said. Now I know enough to start. Meanwhile, Maya printed out every document Barnes had sent. The folder was nearly 2 inches thick. She tucked it into her school backpack. The next morning, she returned to Hale Tower. Not as a janitor's daughter. Not as a trespasser. As a witness. Security didn't let her in. She sat in the lobby backpack in her lap until one of the junior analysts, someone who used to nod at her during late-night shifts, walked by. He paused, then leaned down and whispered. Mr. Hale said, "If you ever came back, I should take you straight up." Inside Jackson's office, Maya sat across from the man whose pen she'd stopped days earlier. He didn't offer her water. He didn't smile, but he extended his hand. "Thank you," he said, "for seeing what none of us did." Maya nodded. "I owe you an apology," Jackson continued, "and I owe you something else, the truth." He gestured to the wall behind him where whiteboards were now filled with names, dates, wire roots. At the center of it all, Clara, Derek, Vaughn Global, and now Ravencross Holdings. Jackson turned to Maya. "You saw the tip of the iceberg." She opened her bag and pulled out the folder. "Then let's dig." Back at the Gold Club lounge, Clara Hale paced behind a closed door. Derek stood at the window, watching traffic. "He's pulling away," Clara snapped. "The girl Maya, she's in the building again." Derek didn't blink. "Then we bury them," he said. He reached into his briefcase and handed Clara a flash drive. Full list. Judges, reporters, 1 federal clerk. Clara closed the drive into her palm like a blade. Outside across the street, a city bus rolled by, and through the fogged glass window, Maya watched them. Her phone was recording. The game wasn't quiet anymore. It had just gone nuclear. Victoria Chan stared out the window of her law office, the city below, veiled in snow and smog. She wasn't a woman who took cases lightly, especially not corporate ones. But this wasn't just fraud. This was intentional structural sabotage. She turned from the window and faced Jackson Hale. "So, let me get this straight," she said, voice razor sharp. "Your wife and Derek Vaughn orchestrated multiple fraudulent mergers over a decade, created offshore shell corporations, redirected liability to your company, and a 16-year-old girl caught it before your entire legal team." Jackson nodded once. Victoria cracked a smile. "I want in." At Hale Tower, Maya sat in a glass-walled room with a whiteboard, a highlighter, and a fire in her chest. The words she'd written on the board were Ravencross Holdings, Vaughn, Clara, shell mergers, collapse, each word linked by red lines. Victoria arrived with a binder. "Every merger Vaughn touched in the last 7 years," she said. "Patterns the same. Create a shell, merge it with a legit firm, leave a trap clause, withdraw." She flipped open to a highlighted spreadsheet. Out of 11 deals, 9 failed within 6 months, 2 under litigation. Vaughn walked with over $270 million in structured payouts, and Clara Maya asked. She signed off as internal counsel or liaison for at least 5. Maya exhaled. She was never just his wife. No, Victoria said. She was his co-architect. Meanwhile, across town, Clara entered a small law firm disguised under the name Halston Advisory. In her designer coat, she looked like a woman heading to brunch. But inside, behind locked doors, a meeting was already underway. Derek Vaughn sat with a team of lawyers. Behind him, a digital map of their operations flickered on screen. Clara approached the screen, her eyes scanning the known exposure points. This girl, she said flatly, has the makings of a problem. She's a teenager, one attorney said. She's a symbol, Clara corrected. Symbols are dangerous. She has Victoria Chan, Derek added. Another lawyer winced. Then we don't discredit the girl, Clara said. We burn the structure around her. School records, financials, family history. Find pressure points. Back at the apartment, Denise Williams stood at the sink, the sound of running water masking her anxiety. Maya entered with another folder under her arm. Her mother turned. You're not stopping, are you? Maya shook her head. They tried to bury you, Denise said, not unkindly. Which means I'm over the target, Maya replied. Denise smiled bitterly. You're 16. Maya smiled back. And I'm not going anywhere. That evening, Jackson sat in his study, staring at a printed transcript, an audio file of Clara's voice. He won't question it if I push at the right time. And if he does, Vaughn's voice had asked. Then we remind him what he has to lose. He'd played it 5 times. Now he forwarded it to his private counsel, Victoria, and finally, the Department of Justice. The next morning, Victoria met with Maya and Jackson in the secure conference room at Hale Tower. We're past the point of secrets, she said. She laid out 3 documents. First, a whistleblower protection petition for Maya. Second, a request for injunction against the Vaughn merger. Third, a subpoena draft targeting Clara, Derek, and all connected entities. Justice moves slow, Victoria said, but with this much weight, we make them move. Maya leaned forward. They'll try to erase it. They'll try to erase you, Victoria said. So we make you undeniable. Clara, meanwhile, was already in motion. She called in favors. Bankers were warned. A school principal received an anonymous complaint labeling Maya a disruptive influence. And at a private summit, Clara whispered into a senator's ear, "This is nothing but teenaged hysteria, weaponized by a bitter CEO." But even as she maneuvered, the walls tightened. Maya arrived at school to find whispers trailing her. Some classmates looked at her with awe, others with fear. In her locker, a folded note. "We know where you live. Stay quiet." She showed it to the principal. Victoria secured a restraining order that same day. Meanwhile, Jackson received a message from an anonymous number. "She's not worth it." He stared at the words for a long time, then picked up his phone and called Victoria. "Can you get federal eyes on this?" "They're watching," she said, "but they need someone willing to testify publicly." He didn't hesitate. Then, "I will." That night, Clara stood in her penthouse suite, a glass of wine untouched in her hand. Derek sat across from her. "She's still a child," Clara said. "And she's winning," Derek replied. Clara's jaw tensed. Then Derek opened a briefcase and pulled out a thick black folder. He slid it across the marble table. Inside, a list of people. Judges, reporters, clerks. Clara stared at it for a long moment, then closed the folder. "Let's bury them." Outside, unnoticed from a city bus window, Maya's phone camera recorded every second. By Thursday morning, the halls of Hale Investments felt like a dam about to crack. Executives avoided eye contact. The legal team whispered in corners. Internal servers went down under the excuse of routine maintenance, but everyone knew better. And at the heart of it all, Jackson Hale stood in his office with a manila folder in hand. Inside were 3 signatures, his Victoria Chan's and Maya Williams'. Together, they represented the beginning of a war. At 9:04 a.m., Victoria Chan filed the first motion in the Circuit Court of Cook County petition for immediate injunction and independent audit of Vaughn Global Holdings. Attached was a separate filing sealed, containing an affidavit from Maya Williams, whistleblower, age 16. The paperwork hit the system like a thunderclap. By noon, the Chicago Tribune was first to break it. Breaking hail, investment halts, billion-dollar merger, amid legal motion, anonymous teen insider at center of unfolding investigation. The photo they used was Maya's cropped from a school event website. No name, no caption, just a face, a girl standing on a stage holding a scholarship certificate. Eyes clear, smile bright. Within hours, the story spread business blogs, Twitter threads, financial newsletters. Some praised her, others doubted her. A few mocked her, but none could ignore her. Inside the firm, Jackson entered the boardroom with a stack of documents. His executives sat like schoolchildren waiting for a verdict. He spoke without notes. "I should have seen this sooner," he said, "but I let comfort blind me." He passed the files down the table, proof of offshore accounts, ghost mergers, and a web of deceit that touched every corner of the company's leadership. "You've got a choice," Jackson said. "Help me clean this house from the inside, or watch it burn from the outside." Silence. Then, one by one, heads nodded. Across town, Clara Hale and Derek Vaughn met in a shadowy wine bar beneath the Four Seasons. Clara didn't drink. She scanned her phone, then looked up with narrowed eyes. She's not going away. Derek sipped his scotch. "You saw the story. She's in the press. The injunction is public." Derek leaned forward. "You want me to end it?" Clara's jaw flexed. End her. But Maya wasn't backing down. She met Victoria at a secure location, an unused city law library downtown. The two sat across from each other under dim overhead lights. "I've gone through the second batch from Barnes," Maya said. "There's a shell company registered in Belize. Same director name as the Cayman account." Victoria nodded. "We're cross-referencing now. The feds want you to stay quiet. Lay low." Maya's hand trembled as she zipped the flash drive into a pouch. "They've already threatened me. They'll do worse if they can," Victoria said. "But now you've got the law behind you." Maya looked at her. "Do I?" Victoria paused, then smiled softly. "You have me." That night, Maya's school principal received a complaint filed from an encrypted account. The message claimed she was a security risk defiant and emotionally unstable. The principal didn't believe it, but he flagged it. An hour later, Victoria's legal team filed a civil protection order for both Maya and her mother, shielding them from harassment, intimidation, and surveillance. Meanwhile, inside a darkened study, Jackson Hale reviewed a file labeled Clara Internal Authorization Patterns. Every document signed under her name bore one shared trait: timing. She signed contracts moments before wire transfers. She authorized memos minutes before legal clauses were buried. The final puzzle piece, a redacted memo from 3 years ago, Barnes had flagged it before disappearing. Scrawled in the margin, in red pen, "One more Clara clause, and this house falls." At 8:30 p.m., Victoria received a call from a DOJ liaison. "We've read the filings," the agent said. "This is organized deception across state lines. We're assigning a white-collar crimes team, but we need more," he added. "More than internal files. We need a voice." Victoria looked at the ceiling. "You'll have it." Back at home, Maya sat beside her mother on the couch. They weren't speaking, just watching. CNN was playing a panel on corporate ethics. One of the guests, a former SEC attorney, said, "If this girl's story holds up, this could be one of the biggest white-collar whistleblower cases since Enron." Maya's heart skipped, not because of the recognition, but because it was working. That night, Derek Vaughn stood on a penthouse balcony, phone to his ear. "She's getting louder," he said. On the other end, Clara's voice was icy. "Then we scream louder." He nodded slowly, then pulled a folder from his briefcase. Inside, counter-allegations, fabricated behavioral reports, hacked emails. They were going to paint Maya as unstable, a delusional janitor's daughter obsessed with power. "She's 16, Derek muttered. "We can crack her." Back inside, Maya's phone buzzed. A new text. "Unknown number. Stop now, or your past becomes public." Maya stared at the screen. Then she powered it off. She picked up a marker. On her bedroom mirror, she wrote, "Not afraid. Not backing down." The morning light didn't warm the apartment. Maya sat at the kitchen table, her fingers wrapped tightly around a ceramic mug. Her cocoa had long gone cold. Across from her, Denise scrolled silently on her phone, then froze. "Baby, you need to see this." She turned the screen toward Maya. It was a blog post headline, bold in all caps. "Janitor's daughter or paid plant whistleblower at Hale Investments under scrutiny." The article included photos of Maya in her school uniform, grainy screenshots of her old social media posts, and vague accusations that she'd been coached or, worse, manipulated to fabricate legal claims. "This is their play," Victoria said hours later, pacing across the floor of her office. "They want to discredit you before the investigation sticks. Character assassination, digital smears, private files leaked anonymously. This is how empires fight back." Maya kept her face still, but her hands trembled. "I thought the truth would speak louder," she said. Victoria stopped. "The truth doesn't shout. It survives. We'll protect you." Across town, Derek Vaughn leaned back in a sleek leather chair, watching a media analyst scroll through metrics. "She's trending," the man said. Derek smirked. "And we're winning. Comments are split. She's getting support, but the noise we seeded is working. People are second-guessing." Beside him, Clara crossed her legs. "Let them whisper. The goal isn't to destroy her, it's to drown her in doubt." Derek sipped from a tumbler. "Then let's make it louder." By evening, Maya's school inbox had flooded with anonymous emails. "Fraud? You're not a hero. Attention seeker. Stay in your lane." One message contained photoshopped images of Maya in court with the words "liar" scrawled across her face. She stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. The next day at school, things were worse. Friends avoided her. One teacher, visibly uncomfortable, redirected a classroom discussion when Maya raised her hand. Another student dropped a note in her locker. "Traitors don't graduate." She took the note, folded it, and placed it in her backpack next to the Vaughn contracts. Then she walked into the counselor's office. "I need to talk," she said. An hour later, Victoria had the principal on speakerphone and two legal aides drafting an anti-harassment protocol. At Hale Tower, Jackson sat with his board. "The pressure's mounting," one executive said. "The press is poking holes," said another. "They think the girl's being used." Jackson stood and walked to the window. He turned back, voice low. "She isn't being used. We're just not used to someone seeing through the fog." Back at Maya's apartment, Denise answered the landline. The voice was cold, robotic. "Your daughter's tampering with forces she doesn't understand. If you want her safe, make her stop." Denise slammed the phone down. Later that night, Victoria brought Maya to a private co-working space downtown, secure, anonymous, with blacked-out windows and no listed directory. They spread documents across a table. Timelines, bank records, cross-border payments. Clara's name popped up 37 times. But Maya kept going back to one name, Ravencross Holdings. "I think it's their key shell," she said. "Everything flows through it. Offshore accounts payouts, transfer receipts." Victoria tapped her pen. "Then we go after it. How we subpoena its registry, but not in the U.S. We'll coordinate with a contact in the Virgin Islands. But Maya, if this leaks..." Maya looked up. "I don't care." That night, Clara hosted a charity gala, flashing smiles and shaking hands like a queen on a stage. Cameras clicked. Donors clinked glasses. But across the ballroom, she spotted something unexpected. Jackson. Alone. Sober. Unapologetic. He stepped onto the stage, uninvited. Before we begin, he said into the mic, I'd like to speak not as a CEO, but as a man who let silence guide him. The room quieted. A young woman walked into my boardroom and stopped a disaster. She wasn't on the payroll. She wasn't invited. But she saw what none of us did. Gasps, whispers. She was 16, and the only honest person in the room. Clara's wine glass trembled slightly in her hand. By midnight, the story had gone viral again this time, with Jackson's words stitched into clips of Maya's original warning. The narrative had shifted. Not liar, not plant, truth teller. Still, the pressure didn't stop. At 2 a.m., Maya's phone buzzed. Another anonymous message. You've had your moment. Walk away, or you won't walk again. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and forwarded the message to Victoria. Then she opened her notebook and wrote, Let them shout. I've got the truth. The snow outside Hale Tower had turned to ice. Hard. Inevitable. Just like the truth. Clara Hale walked briskly through the marble lobby, head-high heels striking like a metronome of power, but the usual hush of reverence wasn't there. This time, employees didn't greet her. They stared. And the stares carried weight. She pressed the executive elevator button, her reflection catching briefly in the polished doors. For the first time, it looked unfamiliar. Upstairs in the corner office that used to be a sanctuary, Jackson Hale stood with Victoria and a federal investigator named Agent Nichols. He handed over the final document Barnes had delivered before disappearing. Confirmation of Ravencross Holdings as the clearinghouse, Jackson said. Clara's name is attached through digital key signatures on 3 separate internal transfers. Nichols nodded grimly. It's enough to issue a subpoena and possibly a search warrant, but we'll need someone to validate the documents. I will, Jackson said, and Maya Victoria answered. She already has. Meanwhile, Maya was sitting in the back of her school library, eyes scanning offshore registration databases from a borrowed laptop. Her heart thudded in her chest. Every search brought her closer to something undeniable. There it was. RCH Group Limited, British Virgin Islands. The director listed Clarice Hale, her full legal name. She gasped. She wasn't just facilitating Vaughn's schemes. Clara had created the funnel. Maya copied the registry info, backed up the files, and sent them straight to Victoria. 10 minutes later, she received a simple reply. It's over. She's going down. That evening, Clara returned home to find her front door ajar. Inside, Jackson stood in the dimly lit foyer holding a printed document. This was forwarded to our compliance team from the DOJ, he said without turning. They traced Ravencross Holdings to a trust in your name. She didn't blink. It's standard business practice, tax protections. They called it fraud. She stepped forward slowly. You're really going to believe a janitor's daughter over me, no, Jackson said. I'm going to believe the proof. Because that girl saw the truth you buried in plain sight. He walked past her without another word. Meanwhile, at Victoria's office, Agent Nichols made the call. Warrant is signed. We're greenlit for asset freeze and subpoena service. Clara Hale is no longer untouchable. Maya, sitting nearby, felt the weight shift. For the first time, Clara was no longer the predator. She was the one being hunted. At the same hour, Clara met Derek in the parking garage beneath the Four Seasons. This is bad, she hissed. The DOJ is involved. Jackson's cooperating. The girl won't go away. Derek nodded. I've lined up legal counsel in Zurich. Cayman's already prepped. We move what's left before morning. Clara's voice broke. I had everything under control. No, Derek said cold. You had control when no one was watching. But now everyone is. The next morning, a quiet chaos rippled through Chicago's financial district. News broke that Hale Investments had frozen all executive access to offshore accounts. Another headline followed, Whistleblower case triggers sweeping internal review at Vaughn Global. By 9:00 a.m., Clara Hale's name had been pulled from all press releases. By 10 Central a.m., the SEC had opened a parallel inquiry, and by noon, federal agents entered Hale Tower. Maya watched from across the street, tucked beneath a wool cap. She saw them walk past security. Suits, badges, clipboards, calm destruction. "They're doing it," she whispered. "It's really happening." Inside, Jackson watched Clara escorted to a conference room. Her hands didn't tremble, but her face was pale. "You'll regret this," she said to Jackson as she passed. "No," he replied. "I regret trusting you over a child who told the truth." Back at school, Maya sat quietly during lunch, barely touching her sandwich. Then someone slid into the seat beside her. It was the student who once left a cruel note in her locker. "I was wrong," he said softly. "What you did, it was brave." Maya didn't answer, but for the first time in days, she smiled. That afternoon, Victoria held a press briefing outside the courthouse. Her voice was clear, firm, grounded in fact. "We are pursuing full legal accountability against Clara Hale and Derek Vaughn for orchestrating a multi-tier financial fraud scheme across 3 countries. This case began because of one voice, one young woman who refused to stay silent. She turned. Maya stepped up beside her. The cameras clicked. No longer a whisper in the dark. Now a face of truth. Derek Vaughn wasn't used to being on the defensive. He'd spent 20 years moving in shadows, managing risk, leveraging power, and leaving just enough behind to let others take the fall. Now, for the first time in his career, his phone buzzed, not with congratulations, but containment notices. Urgent Cayman account flagged. Do not transfer. RCH Holdings audit order filed. Internal legal flagged Williams as a federal witness. The walls weren't just closing in. They were folding fast. He sat in his high-rise office overlooking Millennium Park, watching the sun struggle through the Chicago fog. His whiskey stayed untouched on the table, his usual confidence replaced by the stillness of calculation. Across the room, a junior advisor entered nervously. "They served the subpoena, sir. DOJ's moving fast. Internal docs comms, emails, all of it." Derek didn't look up. "Where's Clara?" "She's not responding. Her phone's off. Get me eyes on her. Now." The door closed behind the aide, but Derek didn't move. Instead, he opened his drawer, pulled out a single flash drive marked Emergency V, and plugged it in. On-screen detailed archives, hidden backups, off-the-books contacts, insurance, and a folder named Burn List. 3 miles away, Clara Hale stood inside a silent elevator, descending the parking structure of a luxury condo she didn't own. Her coat was designer. Her eyes were hollow. The past 24 hours had hollowed out her power. Vaughn had stopped answering. Her name was on the subpoena. Her bank accounts were frozen. Even the nanny refused to answer her texts. She stepped out onto the street alone, no driver waiting. A black SUV across the street flicked its headlights once. She stepped in. Inside, Derek sat in the shadows. "They're not backing down," she said quietly. "They're kids," he muttered. "Kids backed by fools. They're louder than we expected." Derek leaned in. "Then we changed the game. It's not about winning anymore. It's about survival." He opened a folder. Inside were Maya's school records, Maya's mother's employment history, and a line item possible CPS leverage. Bluff only. Clara frowned. "She's just a girl." Derek's eyes narrowed. "No, she's a witness, a symbol. And symbols only stay dangerous if they remain untouched." Meanwhile, Maya sat beside Victoria and Agent Nichols in a secured government conference room. The windows were blacked out. The files on the table were stamped in red. Confidential. Active case. Nichols leaned forward. Vaughn's next move will be personal. Intimidation, disinformation, media framing. Possibly private surveillance. Maya's mouth was dry. He already tried. Victoria placed a hand on her shoulder. "But now we're watching him." Nichols nodded. "But you need to stay locked down. No solo interviews. No public appearances without clearance." Understood. Maya nodded once. I'm not afraid. You should be, Nichols said gently. That's how we'll keep you safe. Back in the city, Jackson sat alone in the corner of the old legal archive floor, dusty, disused, forgotten. He flipped through contracts no one had reviewed in years. Shell firms, old mergers notes from Barnes. His hands trembled. On one page, he saw a clause nearly identical to the one Maya had uncovered. From 5 years ago. He'd signed it. He sank back in the chair, the weight of guilt falling over him like a lead curtain. He'd built a billion-dollar empire on trust, yet the biggest threat had grown from within his own home. At that moment, Clara scrolled through her encrypted messenger. They froze everything. We have 72 hours before federal review starts connecting dots. He's putting the girl on center stage. The board is folding. She stared at the screen, then typed, "Do we still have Plan B?" Seconds later, Derek replied, "Yes, but we'll need to burn it all." The next morning, Maya woke to the sound of helicopters circling the Hale Foundation building. She sat upright. On TV, breaking news: federal investigation expands into Vaughn-linked merger schemes. Internal employee may be key witness. Though her name wasn't listed, the photo was clear. She turned to her mother. "They're going to try to turn this into a circus." Denise nodded. Then, don't give them a show. Give them the truth. Inside a secure archive at DOJ, Agent Nichols reviewed a set of documents sent anonymously overnight. No return address. But every document was clean, exact damaging. Photos of Vaughn and Clara in early merger negotiations, long before public disclosures. Memos referencing payments to consulting intermediaries in Zurich. Handwritten notes on Hale Investments letterhead. Signed by Clara herself. It was the beginning of the end. In a dimly lit bar, Derek Vaughn poured himself a drink. "You know what we need to do," Clara said across from him. "I do. And you're ready." Derek raised his glass. "To burning what's left." But neither of them noticed the tiny black dot blinking from the bottom of the table, the kind used in sting operations. FBI surveillance had begun. The fuse had been lit. The boardroom had never felt so heavy. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Hale Tower, but no one admired the view. Around the conference table, 12 senior executives sat stiff and silent, their hands folded, their faces pale. Jackson Hale entered not in his tailored Navy suit, but in a black shirt, sleeves rolled. He didn't carry a speech, just a box. He placed it on the table. "Inside this," he said, "is every contract clause wire transfer and internal memo that slipped through our gates because we trusted the wrong people, including me." A few murmurs. He didn't pause. This company was built on a promise that our word meant something, that we did clean business, but behind our marble and glass, we let rot take root. He pulled out the top document. Clara Hale and Derek Vaughn used this firm as a shield while draining trust from our partners' clients and our own people. The executives looked to one another, afraid to speak. Jackson continued, "We're not here to vote on guilt. That ship has sailed. We're here to vote on what comes next." Victoria Chan entered flanked by 2 federal agents. Each executive was handed a document titled Voluntary Disclosure of Internal Corruption Agreement, Hale Investments. "Sign," Victoria said, "and you cooperate fully. Or leave and become part of the investigation." The room held its breath. Then slowly one hand moved. Then another. One by one they signed. Downstairs in the lobby, Maya waited, pacing beside Denise. The press had gathered outside, cameras pressed to the glass. "They're not going away," Maya whispered. "Let them watch," Denise said softly. "Just make sure they see the right story." The elevator dinged. Jackson stepped out. He walked straight up to Maya. "I need you upstairs," he said. "They've agreed to move forward, but only if you're willing to sit at the table." "Me?" Maya blinked. "You're the one who started this," Jackson said. You belong in the room." In the conference room, Maya sat down no longer in a hoodie, but a crisp white blouse and blazer. She didn't speak first. Jackson did. "This is Maya Williams," he said to the board. "She's not a lawyer, a banker, or an executive. But she read what none of us did. She raised the alarm we ignored. She is the reason we still have a company." Maya took a breath. "I'm not here for a title," she said. "I just want the truth to matter." And in the silence that followed, it finally did. Elsewhere, Derek Vaughn was on the phone. Jackson's flipping his own board, his contact said. "We anticipated that," Derek replied. "What we didn't anticipate is this." There was a pause. "DOJ just filed for asset seizure. Full spectrum." Derek didn't answer. "Zurich, Cayman, the Virgin Islands. They're locking it down. You're out of time." Derek ended the call without a word. Back at Hale Tower, Jackson and Maya sat side by side as Victoria sketched a map of recovery. "Step 1, she said. "Clean house." She crossed out Clara's name on the board. "Step 2, declare formal whistleblower protection for Maya and her mother." Maya blinked. "You can do that." Jackson nodded. "We already did." That evening, Maya returned home to find her school inbox filled with messages. But this time, they weren't threats. "We believe you." "You're brave." "You give me hope." And one from a student she barely knew. "My mom's a janitor, too. She cried when she saw the news." Maya closed the laptop. Her hand still trembled, but her heart didn't. At a nearby federal courthouse, Clara Hale was served. The agents moved quietly. No cuffs, no sirens, just a sealed folder and a date. She didn't cry. She didn't protest. But the moment she stepped outside and saw the cameras flash, she froze, and then turned away into the black SUV waiting at the curb. Inside, Derek sat without speaking. They didn't need words. They'd just been outplayed by a girl they never saw coming. That night, Jackson stood in his office, looking out over the city. Victoria entered, holding a new folder. "Justice Department is moving faster than we thought," she said. "They've got enough to indict both Clara and Vaughn." Jackson turned. "And the company?" "It'll survive," Victoria said, "because this time we're leading with truth." He stared out the window, then whispered, "Let it rise." Maya Williams woke to the sound of her name on national television, the 16-year-old at the center of one of the biggest corporate whistleblower cases in the country. She blinked, pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, and turned up the volume. A news anchor spoke over footage of Hale Tower courtroom sketches and blurry snapshots of Maya from her school website. Sources confirm that this young woman uncovered a liability clause that would have funneled millions in legal exposure through Hale Investments. Experts say her intervention may have saved the company from collapse. Maya muted the screen. Her mother, Denise, walked in holding a steaming cup of tea. "You know what that sounds like to me." Maya looked up. What confirmation? But just beneath Denise's smile was tension tight in her shoulders, taut in her eyes. Because with fame came something else. Visibility. Across the city, Derek Vaughn flipped through a media analysis report. "She's being framed as a hero," his advisor muttered. "The narrative is out of control." Derek tossed the report aside, then shifted. To what? He turned eyes hard. To fear. Later that day, Victoria escorted Maya to a closed-door meeting with the Justice Department. Outside photographers crowded the courthouse steps. Inside, an agent placed a small device on the table. "Voice distortion unit," he explained. "You'll be recorded, but your voice won't be used without consent." Maya nodded. "What you say today," Victoria told her, "won't just shape this case. It might protect future victims of corporate fraud for years to come." Maya took a deep breath, then began to speak. At school, things weren't quiet. Some students treated her like royalty offering to carry her books, asking to take selfies, even begging for interviews on their TikTok channels. Others avoided her entirely. A few stared too long, and one slipped a note into her locker that read, "You made them powerful." Don't think you're safe now. She didn't show it to anyone. Not yet. But she didn't throw it away either. That night, Maya lay awake, staring at her bedroom ceiling. Her mother entered and sat beside her. "I should have protected you from this," Denise whispered. Maya shook her head. "You raised me to tell the truth. That's what I'm doing." Denise's eyes shimmered. "They're coming after you." Maya turned. "Then let them. Because I'm not backing down." The next day, Victoria received an encrypted tip anonymous. She forwarded it to Jackson with 2 words. "Watch this." The video began with Derek Vaughn at a private fundraiser. He was speaking casually to a group of suited donors. "She's just a janitor's kid." A one-time headline. If we leak the right files, turn public sympathy into suspicion, this whole crusade unravels. One man laughed, and the DOJ Vaughn shrugged. "Politics. Give them a bigger fish and they'll drop the bait." The video ended. Jackson stared at the screen, then picked up his phone. "Let's go public." Full statement. Tonight. At 8:00 p.m., Jackson Hale stood at a press podium flanked by Victoria and Maya. "This company nearly collapsed under its own blindness," he said, "but a girl with no power, no title, no voice, changed everything." He turned to Maya. "She is not a pawn. She is not an accident. She is proof that truth lives where no one's looking." And then Maya stepped forward. "My name is Maya Williams. I'm not a prodigy. I'm not a threat. I'm just someone who read what they tried to hide." She paused. "I didn't expect to be here, but now that I am, I won't be quiet." The press erupted, and the next morning her face was on every major front page. But with recognition came retaliation. At 3:14 a.m., a rock smashed through the living room window of Maya's apartment. Attached a note, "This is your last warning." Denise screamed. Maya ran to the window, heart pounding. Victoria arrived in 10 minutes. By dawn, the building had full federal surveillance. In the days that followed, Maya received hundreds of messages, some from strangers thanking her, some from students in other cities inspired to speak up, and one from a name she didn't know. I saw it too. In Houston. Vaughn did the same thing to my uncle's company. They lost everything. Maya read it twice, then added the name to her file. The puzzle was growing, and now she wasn't solving it alone. The cold Chicago wind cut through the cracks of the abandoned law office like a blade. Clara Hale stood near the window, her coat wrapped tight, her breath visible in the air. Gone was the polished perfection of the woman who once chaired charity galas. Now her makeup was faded, her hair tied back, and her eyes sharper than ever. Across from her, a man in a gray wool suit stood without speaking. His name wasn't known to the public. He had no LinkedIn, no business cards. But everyone in finance knew his nickname, the Cleaner. "I need leverage," Clara said. The man didn't move. "Something that flips this story. Buries the girl. Dismantles the case before Vaughn and I are indicted." The Cleaner finally raised an eyebrow. "You want to go after a minor one with whistleblower protection." "She's a symbol now," Clara hissed, "and symbols are meant to be shattered." He studied her. "For twice my usual fee, I'll give you 3 options." Clara pulled a checkbook from her coat and wrote the number without hesitation. Back at Hale Tower, Maya sat with Jackson and Victoria in a secure internal suite. Documents were spread across the table, contracts, memos, offshore account ledgers. But what caught Maya's attention was a new folder marked Operation Rebuild. "What's this?" she asked. Jackson leaned forward. "It's what comes after." Inside were proposals. New transparency policies, whistleblower incentives, board restructuring, "We're not just going after them," he said. "We're fixing the hole they crawled through." Maya smiled faintly. "Good. Let's make sure no one ever needs to do what I did again." That night, Clara made her move. The cleaner delivered his report, 3 Paths of Destruction 1. Smear Campaign 2.0, digitally enhanced academic records portraying Maya as unstable. 2. Public shaming leak, a deepfake video implying Maya had been bribed by Hale's competitors. 3. Family pressure point, an anonymous CPS tip suggesting Denise was abusing her daughter. Clara stared at the files. "All 3, she said." The cleaner nodded and vanished. The first hit came the next morning. A story dropped on an obscure but virally optimized blog site. Whistleblower or welfare fraud. The truth about Maya Williams' home life. It featured blurred photos of Maya's apartment quotes from anonymous neighbors and even a forged school counselor report. Within hours, social media began to ripple. Whistleblower or fraud trended briefly on X, formerly Twitter, but this time people weren't silent. One teacher responded, "I taught Maya. She's a straight-A student. This is garbage." A classmate posted, "I've seen her help kids who were getting bullied. She's not a fraud. You are." Victoria acted fast, contacting every outlet that picked up the fake story. Within 24 hours, legal takedown notices were issued. The blog was suspended. The digital fingerprints traced back to a private server in Zurich, connected to a dummy account once used by RCH Holdings. The evidence now linked back to Clara. Meanwhile, Maya returned home to find her mother sitting stiffly on the couch. "They came today," Denise said quietly. CPS. Knocked on the door. Asked questions. Maya dropped her backpack. What they said, they got a tip about emotional instability. "I showed them your trophies, your homework, your college letters. They left. But Maya," Denise's voice cracked, "they're playing dirty now." Maya clenched her jaw. "Then so will I legally." That evening, Jackson convened a meeting with federal investigators, Victoria and Maya. He slammed the forged report on the table. "She's 16, he said, voice low, "and they're willing to destroy a child to save their empire." Agent Nichols didn't blink. "Then it's time we moved on Clara. Officially." Victoria leaned in. "And if Vaughn runs?" Nichols smiled grimly. "He won't get far. He's already on 6 watch lists." Across town, Clara met Vaughn in a dark, private lounge. "It's all unraveling," she said. The smear didn't stick. CPS visit backfired, and the DOJ is preparing a second round of charges. Vaughn's lips tightened. "We still have the Zurich accounts." "Not anymore," Clara whispered. "They froze them this morning." He cursed under his breath. "Then, what do we have left?" Clara stared at him for a long moment. "My name." Back in her apartment, Maya sat by the window, the city lights glowing below. She opened her laptop and began drafting a new letter. It wasn't to the DOJ. It wasn't to the press. It was to her school. "Dear Administration, I respectfully request to be removed from all public-facing materials until my safety is guaranteed. I will complete coursework from home, but please know I am not stepping back, just stepping wisely." She signed it, then scrolled through the messages pouring into her inbox, and paused on one. "You don't know me, but you saved my mom's pension. Vaughn's merger ruined her company 2 years ago. Thank you." Maya smiled. Even in fire purpose still burned bright. It started with a single report, an 8-page financial audit from Zurich, stamped by 2 independent regulators and signed off by a forensic accounting firm. The contents were damning: a network of shell companies, false consulting invoices, hidden payouts. At the center of it all, Derek Vaughn. And one name scrawled beside each international transfer, Clara Hale. By 10:17 a.m., the documents had reached the DOJ. By 11:04 a.m., they had gone viral. Maya watched the news from the safety of a DOJ secure office downtown. The anchor's voice was almost disbelieving. This morning, federal prosecutors confirmed that an international fraud scheme linked to Vaughn Global Holdings and former Hale Investments executive Clara Hale is now under grand jury review. Sources say the initial red flag came not from regulators, but from a 16-year-old whistleblower. The camera cut to a still frame. Maya standing behind a podium, face calm, eyes locked on something just beyond the lens. Not fear, not anger. Focus. In Vaughn's office, chaos had finally found its match. Phone lines buzzed. Legal counsel shouted across rooms. The CFO resigned by email. HR called in sick. And Derek Vaughn, the once untouchable architect of billion-dollar mergers, sat at his desk scrolling through an internal Slack thread he was never meant to see. If the DOJ has what the audit says they do, Vaughn's finished. Forget NDA. I'm talking to my lawyer. He knew. They all knew. His empire wasn't bleeding. It was hemorrhaging. At Hale Tower, Jackson stood before a wall of whiteboards. Timelines, photos, financials, everything Clara and Vaughn thought they'd buried. Beside him, Victoria crossed her arms. "We're preparing to testify at the grand jury hearing," she said. And Vaughn just lost 2 senior executives this morning. They flipped. Testify against him. Victoria nodded. And Clara. Jackson exhaled. What about Maya? Victoria glanced toward the door where Maya stood holding another envelope. She just got subpoenaed. Back at school, Maya's locker had been decorated in sticky notes. This time, they weren't threats. Go Maya. You're stronger than them. Future President. She smiled, but her fingers still curled protectively around the court summons in her backpack. Later that day, she returned to the secure DOJ meeting room. Agent Nichols greeted her with a rare nod. "You understand, this isn't just testimony," he said. "You'll be under oath. They'll try to corner you." "I know," Maya replied. Nichols leaned forward. "And you're still ready." Maya met his eyes. "I was ready the moment I spoke the first truth." Across town, Clara sat in a silent cafe watching her world unravel on the news ticker. Her phone rang once, twice. She didn't answer. When it buzzed a third time, she finally picked up. Derek's voice was a whisper. "They've subpoenaed Maya." "I know. She'll bury us." Clara didn't respond. Then, softly, "You promised she'd break." Derek's voice was flat. "We underestimated her." The next morning, Jackson held a press conference in the Hale Foundation's central atrium. Maya stood beside him, Victoria behind them. He didn't speak with bluster, just truth. "We failed to look inward. We ignored the warning signs, but the future of this company isn't in revenge, it's in reconstruction." He gestured to Maya. "She taught us that." The press flashed. The internet exploded. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a narrative began to change. No longer the janitor's daughter. Now the girl who wouldn't back down. Back at Vaughn Global Holdings, an emergency meeting was underway. Executives shouted. Emails auto-deleted mid-sentence. And federal agents waited outside with badges in hand. The front receptionist whispered to her colleague, "They're here for him." By the time Derek stepped into the hallway, it was already over. "Mr. Vaughn, an agent, said you're under investigation for conspiracy to commit financial fraud, wire fraud, and international money laundering." Derek raised his hand slowly, a smirk half formed on his lips. "You can't prove a thing." "Don't need to," the agent replied, holding up a flash drive. She already did. Maya stood on the rooftop of the DOJ building, wind whipping her hair around her face. Victoria joined her coat, buttoned to the chin. "You know this won't stop them from trying again," Victoria said. Maya nodded. "But maybe next time, people will look closer." Victoria smiled. "Maybe because you taught them how." Courtroom 4C at the Northern District of Illinois was full before sunrise. Rows of reporters, financial analysts, former clients, and curious citizens packed the benches. The hallways outside overflowed with cameras and murmurs. At the center of it all, the trial of Derek Vaughn and Clara Hale, charged with conspiracy fraud and racketeering. But what most had come for wasn't the prosecution. It was the witness. At 9:03 a.m., Maya Williams entered the courtroom. 16 years old, hair braided neatly, wearing a navy blazer 3 sizes too big and a resolve no one could miss. Denise walked her to the bench, placed a trembling kiss on her temple, and stepped back. Victoria Chan stood beside Maya like a shield made of steel. "Just tell the truth," she whispered. "That's all I've ever done," Maya replied. Judge Rowan, a stern woman with a silver streak in her bun, took the bench. All rise. The trial began. Opening statements painted a picture of systemic corruption deals rigged to bankrupt smaller firms. Millions routed through shell companies, a conspiracy spanning 3 continents. And then, prosecution calls Maya Williams to the stand. The room hushed. Maya took her oath, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. And then she did. "I was helping my mom clean the 27th floor," she said, voice calm, clear. "I found the contract in a copier tray. It was open. Something about it felt off." The prosecutor leaned forward. "What stood out to you?" There was a clause buried deep in paragraph C. It shifted all the risk from Vaughn Global to Hale Investments. If anything went wrong, Hale would take the fall. Vaughn's company walked away clean. Maya's eyes scanned the room. She wasn't just speaking to a jury. She was speaking to the world. On the defense bench, Derek Vaughn leaned back, his smirk gone. Clara sat stiff hands folded, jaw clenched. She hadn't looked at Maya once. But when the prosecutor asked, "Do you see Ms. Hale in the courtroom today?" Maya didn't hesitate. "She's right there." And Clara's eyes finally lifted, just for a second. But it was enough. Cross-examination came next. Derek's attorney approached all silk and smarm. "You claim to have found this clause accidentally." "Yes." "And you just understood it?" "I didn't understand every word Maya admitted, but I understood the intent." The lawyer paced. "Do you have a degree in law number finance? No. Then who are you to tell us what these contracts meant?" Maya paused, then said, loud enough for every corner of the courtroom, "I'm the one who read it." The courtroom stilled. Even the judge's brow twitched. The lawyer tried to pivot. "Wouldn't you agree you were out of your depth?" "No," Maya said firmly. "I think they were banking on no one reading the fine print, and that landed harder than any objection." The prosecution introduced supporting evidence. Email chains, payment trails, burner phones, documents bearing Clara's encrypted signature and Derek's offshore instructions. Then came the final exhibit, the audio file. If he does question it, then we remind him what he has to lose. The jury flinched. Clara bowed her head. Derek stared straight ahead. Later that day, Jackson Hale took the stand. "I built Hale Investments," he said, "and I nearly handed it over to thieves in suits. Why, the prosecutor asked, because I trusted the wrong people and ignored the one who saw what we refused to." He turned and looked at Maya. "She didn't just save this company. She saved me." Outside the courthouse, the world spun. Media vans lined the block. Tweets exploded in real time. Maya Williams trended again, but inside the courtroom, truth stood tall and couldn't be moved. Victoria called her final witness. An SEC analyst confirmed the pattern: 3 failed mergers, identical liability shifts, Clara and Derek at the center. The prosecution rested. That night, Maya lay in bed, unable to sleep. She stared at the ceiling, the echo of courtroom voices still swirling. Her phone buzzed. One message. Unknown number. "You did good. You didn't blink. Keep going." She stared at it. then typed back, "Who is this?" No reply came, but Maya smiled, because she didn't need the name. She already knew truth had watchers now. Clara Hale had spent a lifetime perfecting poise. In courtrooms, charity galas, board meetings, her voice was always smooth, her posture unshakable. She wore power like perfume, invisible but undeniable. But on the morning she took the stand, even the courtroom lighting couldn't soften the shadows under her eyes. She adjusted her slate gray suit, lifted her chin, and stepped forward. Her eyes never met Maya's. The defense began gently. "Mrs. Hale, you've been a respected executive at Hale Investments for over a decade." "Yes, yes." "And you were involved in numerous mergers." "Yes. Did you ever knowingly commit fraud?" Clara paused. "A beat too long." "No," she said. The attorney nodded. "So, the offshore transfers." "The trust account in the BVI." "Raven Cross Holdings, all standard tax mitigation strategies." Clara replied, her voice a little too crisp. "Reviewed by legal." "But you deny any intent to shift liability in the Vaughn merger." "I deny any intent to defraud." Clara answered. The clause in question, if anything, was legalese, easily misread by someone without proper training. She didn't look at Maya, but the implication was clear. Then came the prosecution. Victoria Chan approached the stand slowly. "Ms. Hale, let's talk about the clause in question." Subparagraph C, line 3. "Who inserted that language?" Clara hesitated. "I don't recall." Victoria nodded. "Do you recall authorizing payment to a consulting firm called Tyrex Partners the same day that clause appeared in the draft?" Clara's hand stiffened. "I'd need to see the documentation." Victoria handed it over. Clara took too long to flip through the pages. That payment, Victoria continued, was flagged as unusual by internal audit until the auditor was fired. "Would you like to explain?" That Clara's voice dipped. It was a reorganization. Victoria stepped closer. "No, Ms. Hale. It was a cover-up." A hush fell over the room. Victoria let it sit, then pulled out the final piece. "Let's play a recording." It was Clara's voice, clipped from a secure call. "Just push the deal through. He doesn't need to know. If the girl talks, we discredit her." Clara went pale. I was under pressure. You didn't mean to get caught." Victoria asked. Clara didn't answer. "Or didn't mean to target a 16-year-old who caught what you didn't want anyone to see." Clara's voice cracked. She was just the janitor's kid. Her words trailed off, and the courtroom held its breath. Maya watched silently, fingers clenched in her lap. The woman who once called her invisible had just admitted in open court to trying to erase her. The room shifted, not against Maya, but toward her. Victoria pressed on. "You say you had no intent to defraud, but you authorized signatures linked to 3 offshore accounts. You used your husband's access to reroute funds. You attempted to silence a whistleblower using CPS. You hired a private contractor to conduct a digital smear campaign. And you called a child a threat." Clara's mask cracked. "I didn't plan this alone. Who helped you?" Clara's eyes flared. "You know who." She turned finally toward Derek Vaughn. "It was his clause, his idea. I just made it palatable." The courtroom erupted. Gasps, scribbling pens, flashes of light. Clara had just thrown her co-defendant under the bus. Victoria raised a hand to calm the crowd. "One final question," she said. Why Clara swallowed. "Because I was tired of being the wife, the afterthought. I wanted to be the architect for once, and he told me I could be if I just signed." Victoria's voice softened. "So you betrayed your company?" Your husband, Clara, looked down. "No, I betrayed myself first." The judge called a recess. As Clara stepped down, she passed Maya. For one moment, she paused. Their eyes met. "I was wrong," Clara said, her voice barely audible. Maya didn't respond. Some apologies came too late. Outside the courthouse, the world exploded. The headlines were immediate. Clara Hale turns on Vaughn in shocking courtroom breakdown. Whistleblower Maya Williams, vindicated corporate empire crumbles under teenage witness. Back at home, Maya sat on the fire escape watching snow drift lazily over the city. Denise passed her a mug of cocoa. "You okay?" she asked. Maya nodded. "It's not over." "But it's turning." Her mother looked at her, really looked at her. "You did this, baby. Not the lawyers. Not the agents. You." Maya smiled faintly. "I just read the fine print." When Maya Williams stepped off the courthouse steps that afternoon, something had changed, not just in the legal case, not just in the stock value of Hale Investments, but in the public imagination. A girl once overlooked had become a symbol. By 6 p.m., the hashtag #JustBecauseIClean was trending worldwide. Photos of Maya at the podium, fists clenched, eyes clear, appeared alongside messages from janitors, interns, bus drivers, nursing aides, and night shift workers. Each post shared the same message. They told me I didn't belong. I kept showing up. I read the fine print, too. I'm Maya. A video clip of her courtroom quote. "Just because I clean your floors doesn't mean I don't see the dirt" went viral. It wasn't just testimony anymore. It was a movement. Jackson Hale stood in the boardroom of Hale Investments as his communications director rushed in. "We've received over 300,000 messages in the last 12 hours. Most of them are support donors, advocacy groups, civil rights, lawyers, media outlets. Even Oprah's people reached out." Jackson raised an eyebrow. What do they want? They want to hear from her. He didn't even have to ask who her was. Meanwhile, Maya sat at the kitchen table, still in her courtroom clothes, sipping cold tea, while Denise scrolled through the growing avalanche of mentions. "Maya, there's a girl in Kansas who skipped school to organize a student rally in your name." Maya blinked. "What? And a janitor in Detroit tweeted a poem dedicated to you." "Look." She passed the phone over. The words read. She saw the trap they tried to hide. She stood alone, but walked with pride. And now we see with clearer eyes the truth beneath the tailored lies. Maya read it 3 times, then whispered, "I didn't mean to start anything." Denise smiled softly. Truth has a way of starting fires. That night, Victoria Chan appeared on a national talk show. The host leaned in. "Victoria, you've prosecuted some of the toughest corporate cases in the country. What makes this one different?" She didn't miss a beat. "Maya Williams." The host raised an eyebrow. "Because she read a contract," no, Victoria said. "Because she acted. Because when every adult in that building looked the other way, she didn't." And now, people around the world are remembering they can do the same. Elsewhere, Clara Hale sat in the back of a black van, hands folded, lips tight. Her phone buzzed. "One new message, you're trending." Not in the good way. No name attached. No need for one. Her empire wasn't just cracked, it was being rebranded. Without her. The next day, Maya was invited to speak at an emergency ethics panel held at Northwestern University. She stood at the front of an auditorium filled with law students, corporate leaders, journalists, and professors. Cameras were rolling. She cleared her throat. "I'm not here because I'm smart. I'm not even here because I'm brave. I'm here because someone left a folder open, and I knew what I was reading wasn't right." She paused. "You want to stop corruption? Then stop assuming power only wears suits." The room erupted in applause. By the end of the week, Maya had been interviewed on 3 major networks. Victoria received requests from universities asking if Maya would be available to speak at commencements. Denise fielded offers from publishers, producers, even a publicist who suggested a book. "Tell your story," the woman had pitched. "The world wants more of you." Maya turned her down. She wasn't here to be a celebrity. She was here to be heard. Meanwhile, across financial sectors, firms began re-examining their contracts. Clerks and assistants people long ignored started speaking up. Some flagged predatory clauses. Others refused to sign shady NDAs. Regulators noted an uptick in internal audits initiated not by executives but by entry-level staff. The term Maya clause began circulating in legal circles, a buried liability trap disguised in language only the persistent would catch. Firms started including anti-Maya clauses in redline reviews, not to hide them better, but to delete them entirely. Maya had changed how they read. In a small office in D.C., a junior congresswoman drafted legislation. The name of the bill, the Williams Clause Act. It called for mandatory plain language summaries in all corporate mergers, public or private. Beneath the proposed bill, a quote, "The truth doesn't hide, it's buried." Let's unbury it. Maya sat by the window of her apartment as snow began to fall. Her laptop was open to a blank document. She started to type. "My name is Maya Williams. I was 16 when I saw a line of ink that was meant to disappear." She paused, then kept going. The world was listening now, and she wasn't finished. The boardroom at Vaughn Global was deserted. Derek Vaughn stood alone before the floor-to-ceiling window, staring down at the glittering city that no longer obeyed him. His suit was sharp, his tie immaculate, but his reflection showed the cracks. Dark under-eyes jaw, clenched tight hands twitching with every buzz of his phone. The empire was crumbling. Regulatory raids, employee walkouts, assets frozen. And Maya Williams. She was everywhere. News anchors called her a generational voice. Jackson Hale had named a fellowship after her. And in yesterday's congressional hearing, her name was uttered with reverence. But Vaughn wasn't finished. Not yet. In a private apartment high above River North, Clara Hale sat with her arms folded, watching Vaughn pace. "I told you this would happen," she said coldly. Derek didn't respond. "I told you we should have cut her off at the source. She was a janitor's daughter," he muttered. "A shadow. She was never supposed to matter." Clara's laugh was dry. "Then she shouldn't have outplayed us." Derek turned. "There's still one option left." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean the file?" He nodded. "I kept a backup." That evening, an anonymous package was delivered to a low-tier blog known for clickbait and controversy. Inside, a doctored set of emails. A falsified audio clip. A fake transcript suggesting Maya had been coached, paid, even planted. The story went live at 11:46 p.m. By 12:03 a.m., it was trending. The following morning, Maya sat at her kitchen table as the headline spread like wildfire. Whistleblower hoax leaked docs claim teen was corporate weapon, scripted truth. The Maya Williams debate begins. Denise read aloud with disbelief. "They're calling it Maya-gate." Maya didn't blink. "Victoria will fix it." She wasn't scared. She was furious. At Hale Tower, Victoria slammed the door behind her. This was a planted leak. Poorly done, but effective. The fringe crowds running with it. Jackson stared at the headline on his screen. "We respond. We attack." Victoria's team launched into overdrive. They traced metadata on the blog post back to an IP linked to a ghost server in Dubai. They flagged the fake emails as AI-generated. The voice clip failed audio forensics within minutes. Still, the damage lingered. Doubt is sticky, especially online. But Maya didn't run. She called a press conference. Standing on the courthouse steps flanked by Jackson and Victoria, she stepped to the mic. "My name is Maya Williams. I'm not a ghost. I'm not a script. I'm a daughter, a student, and someone who read something I wasn't supposed to." She held up a printed copy of the falsified email. "This isn't truth. This is fear dressed in my name." The crowd was silent. Then one voice called out, "We believe you," and others followed. "We see you. Stay loud. Don't back down." But across town, Derek Vaughn sat with his attorney, watching the live stream on mute. "She's winning again," the lawyer said. Derek didn't flinch. Then it's time to end the game. He handed over a slip of paper. A name. An address. The lawyer paled. "You're going that far?" Vaughn's voice was quiet. She needs to be reminded of the difference between justice and power. That night, a black SUV idled near Maya's apartment. Inside, two men sat with earpieces and encrypted phones. They weren't journalists. They weren't cops. They were fixers. But what they didn't know, the apartment had been placed under full federal surveillance after the smear attempt. The SUV's plates were flagged by 9:12 p.m. By 9:20, they were surrounded. FBI agents moved fast. Both men were in cuffs before the engine cooled. In a secure facility downtown, the interrogations began. Within hours, one cracked. Names spilled. Payment trails. Encrypted messages from an independent source with investment ties. Victoria stood behind the glass arms crossed. "He just signed Vaughn's confession," she said. At sunrise, a federal warrant was issued for Derek Vaughn's arrest. But when the agents arrived, the penthouse was empty. No sign of Vaughn. No travel logs, no exit pings. He was gone. That morning, Maya opened her inbox to a single message. "You win this round. But the game never ends. No name, no signature. But she knew exactly who had written it. She forwarded it to Victoria, then deleted it. Maya walked into school later that day, backpack on her shoulders, head high. Whispers followed, but they weren't cold anymore. They were protective, admiring. One student passed her a note folded neatly in her locker. Inside, just 5 words. "We read everything now." Class of 2025. Maya smiled. She hadn't stopped him. But she had changed the rules. The courthouse steps were packed by dawn. News crews protesters, school children holding homemade signs. Whispers carried like wind through the crowd. "Today's the day. Has the jury decided? Will she be there?" Inside courtroom 4C buzzed with restrained tension. Reporters checked cameras. Clerks shuffled papers. But all eyes kept darting to one empty seat. Maya Williams hadn't arrived yet. Not because she was afraid, because she was waiting for the moment that mattered most. Victoria Chan stood beside Jackson Hale near the defense table, organizing final files. Across from them, Clara Hale sat frozen, her once regal posture deflated. No makeup, no pearls, just a gray blazer and a gaze that never lifted. Next to her, Vaughn's seat remained empty, still missing, still silent, still watching somewhere. At exactly 10:01 a.m., Maya entered the courtroom. She walked straight to her seat in the second row. The jury re-entered a moment later. No one breathed. The judge nodded. "Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict?" "Yes, Your Honor." The foreperson stood, paper trembling slightly in her hand. "On the count of conspiracy to commit corporate fraud, we find the defendant, Clara Hale, guilty." A gasp rolled through the gallery. "On the count of wire fraud, guilty. On the count of obstruction of justice, guilty." The final blow. "On the charge of targeting a federal whistleblower, guilty." Maya felt her breath return to her body in fragments. Victoria's hand touched her shoulder. It was done. The judge wasted no time. Sentencing would begin immediately. Clara didn't blink, not as the years were read aloud, not as her attorney tried futilely to ask for leniency, not even when the bailiff moved to handcuff her. But as she was led past Maya, something broke. A whisper, so faint it could have been missed. "I did see you." Maya didn't respond. Some ghosts were meant to vanish. Outside, the world was no longer waiting. It was watching. Journalists surrounded Victoria as she stepped into the sun. "Do you believe justice was served?" someone shouted. She didn't hesitate. No. But it was started. Back in the courtroom, Jackson approached Maya. "Thank you," he said, for seeing what we wouldn't, for speaking when we couldn't. Maya smiled softly. Now build it better. He nodded. I promise. 2 days later, a national ethics summit opened in Washington, D.C., with an unusual keynote speaker, Maya Williams. She stood in a room of CEOs, lawmakers, and legal experts, all eyes on her. Integrity doesn't wear a suit. She began. It wears courage. She told them everything. The contract, the clause, the silence, the smear. She ended with a challenge. Next time someone like me speaks, don't ask if she belongs. Ask if you're listening. The speech went viral in less than an hour. Clips of her words aired on prime time. Think pieces were published within the day. And by week's end, 3 major banks began internal reviews of all merger clauses inspired by the Maya Clause ruling. Meanwhile, in Chicago, the Hale Foundation held a ceremony. A new scholarship. A new standard. A plaque was unveiled at the foot of the tower Maya once cleaned. It read, "Truth sees everything." Even when no one is looking. Under it, her name in gold. Maya Williams. That night, Maya sat by the window of her apartment, watching city lights flicker through the snow. Denise handed her a letter. You got another one. Maya opened it carefully. It was handwritten. No return address. Inside, I used to think I had to be silent to survive. You taught me I can speak and still stand. Thank you. She folded the note slowly. Another quiet victory. Later that evening, Victoria called. You've been invited to the DOJ Ethics Task Force. I'm 16, Maya said. Victoria laughed. You're the reason they exist. Maya considered, then nodded. I'll help. But I won't just sit in meetings. Good, Victoria replied. We need more than seats filled. We need systems changed. In a dark room on the other side of the world, Derek Vaughn stared at a monitor. The verdict played again on a loop. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. Until finally, he whispered, She changed the game. 6 months later, the lobby of Hale Tower looked nothing like it had before. Gone were the marble busts of former CEOs. Gone was the quiet hierarchy of whispers and glances at uniforms. In their place stood a bronze statue, not tall, not towering, but human-sized. A girl with a folder in one hand. The other hand held slightly out, not raised in protest, but in offering. The plaque read, She read what others skipped. She stood where others shrank. And because of her, we look deeper now. Below that one simple line, Maya Williams. Witness. Reader. Reformer. Inside, Maya sat at a polished conference table. But not as a guest. Not as a curiosity. As a voice. Her seat at the DOJ's Youth Integrity Advisory Board had become more than symbolic. She'd reviewed real cases, helped draft real safeguards, even contributed to language in the newly signed Williams Clause Act, requiring all high-value merger contracts to undergo third-party review for obfuscation and liability reversals. She hadn't just changed Hale Investments. She'd changed how business was done. Across the city, Clara Hale began her sentence at a federal minimum security facility in Wisconsin. She made no press appearances, no appeals, only silence. Her name had vanished from the company website, from boardrooms, from headlines. But Maya didn't rejoice. In an interview with The Atlantic, she simply said, Justice isn't about revenge. It's about returning balance and ensuring no one has to risk their future just to tell the truth. Meanwhile, Jackson Hale did rebuild, but not in his own image, in hers. The new Hale Code of Ethics bore Maya's signature alongside his. It was included in every employee's handbook printed on the first page. He retired from day-to-day leadership a year later. In his final address, he said, I once built a fortress of capital. She reminded me to build a house of values. At home, Denise Williams returned to work, not out of necessity, but by choice. When asked why she didn't just retire, she said, Because every floor still needs cleaning. And I want them to see what dignity looks like. One morning, Maya returned to her high school to speak to the senior class. She stood in the same auditorium where months earlier, some had called her a liar. Now, every seat was filled. Teachers, parents, even the janitorial staff sat in the front row. "I'm not special," she began. "I didn't stop a billion-dollar fraud because I'm smarter than you. I did it because I asked a question and didn't stop asking when it got uncomfortable." The students were silent. Then thunderous applause. Afterward, a girl with glasses and shaky hands approached her. "I want to be like you." Maya smiled. "Be better." That night, back in her apartment, Maya opened an envelope from Columbia University. Full scholarship, not just for business, but for policy reform. Denise hugged her so tight, it almost knocked her tea over. "You're going to do more than see the dirt," she whispered. "You're going to plant something new in it." And she did. She planted courage where there was once silence, clarity where there was once confusion, dignity in every line of fine print that no one ever thought to read. Because Maya Williams wasn't just a girl who saw something wrong. She became the blueprint for doing what's right. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to catch more gripping stories like this. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.